The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the backyard, painting everything in amber and gold. Sarah watched from the kitchen doorway as her 17-year-old stepson, Daniel, practiced his throws against the old oak tree. His laughter drifted on the breeze, free, light, and rare. 3 years had passed since Sarah married his father, Robert. Their home had found its rhythm, but between Sarah and Daniel remained an invisible boundary, polite but distant. Until that afternoon. She stepped onto the grass. "Could you use some company?" Daniel turned, surprised, then smiled. "Yeah, actually." They fell into an easy rhythm, tossing the ball back and forth, their conversation flowing naturally. For the first time, his usual guard melted away. Sarah felt something warm in her chest, a connection not built on obligation, but trust. Then she launched the ball higher. Daniel moved quickly, but his foot caught on uneven ground. She lunged to steady him, and they both tumbled onto the soft grass, breathless with laughter. For a moment, everything was fine. Then, something shifted. Daniel went still. His expression changed from amusement to tension, then embarrassment. Sarah understood immediately. A brief, unintended glance revealed what had caused his sudden discomfort. An involuntary physiological response, completely beyond his control. But her first instinct wasn't judgment, it was compassion. She stood quickly, brushing off the grass, keeping her voice kind and steady. "You all right?" He nodded, staring at the ground. Mortified. "These things happen," she said softly. "It's completely normal. Don't worry about it." She didn't dwell on it. Instead, she smiled and said, "Come on, let's go inside. We've earned some cold drinks." Inside, the silence felt heavier. She poured lemonade, talking about ordinary things, exams, weekend plans, a new restaurant. Gradually, the tension left his shoulders. His usual smile returned. That night, Sarah sat by the window, looking out at the darkened yard. She thought about the delicate nature of raising a teenager, especially when you're not their biological parent. One wrong word, and the walls could go up permanently. But she had chosen empathy over embarrassment. The next morning, Daniel came downstairs hesitantly. She greeted him warmly, acting as though nothing unusual had happened. "French toast," she offered. He paused, then nodded. "French toast sounds really good." As she placed the plate in front of him, golden and dusted with sugar, he spoke quietly. "Thanks, Sarah, for yesterday, for not making it a big thing." She looked at him with kind eyes. "You don't need to thank me. Everyone has moments like that. What matters is how we move forward." That morning, something unspoken sealed between the MA trust that hadn't existed before. It wasn't about what had happened in the yard. It was about how they chose to handle it. She chose empathy. He chose honesty. From that day forward, Daniel smiled more freely. He initiated conversations. He held around the house without being asked. Their bond deepened, shaped by mutual respect and genuine understanding. Weeks later, Daniel sat beside her on the porch as the sun set. "I was really scared after you and Dad got married," he admitted. "But you never gave up. Even when things were weird or awkward, you just stayed kind." "That meant everything." Sarah smiled. "You taught me something too. That family isn't about perfection. It's about patience, grace, and showing up even in the uncomfortable moments." Before he left for college, Daniel found her in the kitchen and hugged her tight. "You're the reason I know what real family means," he whispered. As his car disappeared down the street, Sarah stood at the gate, watching until she couldn't see him anymore. The sadness was there, but it was mixed with deep peace. Because she understood now, growth isn't always comfortable, but it's always worth embracing with compassion. As his car disappeared down the street, Sarah stood at the gate, watching until she couldn't see him anymore. The sadness was there, but it was mixed with deep peace. She turned and walked back into the house. The silence greeted her like an old friend. She ran her fingers along the edge of the kitchen counter, pausing where Daniel used to leave his backpack every afternoon. Small things, tiny memories. They filled the space now. Over the next few weeks, Sarah found herself thinking about that day in the yard more often than she expected. Not with discomfort anymore. With gratitude. It had been a moment that could have broken them, but instead, it became the foundation of everything. One evening, Robert found her sitting on the porch alone. "You've been quiet lately," he said, sitting beside her. "Everything okay?" She nodded slowly. I've just been thinking about Daniel, about how much he's changed. Robert smiled. You had a lot to do with that, you know? She looked at him. Do you think so? I know so, he said simply. Before you came, he was withdrawn, angry, even. Losing his mother so young, he built walls. But you never tried to knock them down. You just waited. You were patient. And eventually, he let you in. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. She hadn't realized how much Robert had noticed. That night, she wrote Daniel a letter. Not an email or a texta, real letter on paper. She told him how proud she was. How the house felt different without him. How she hoped he was eating well and getting enough sleep. And at the end, she wrote, You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be you. And I'm grateful every day that you let me be part of your story. She mailed it the next morning. 3 weeks later, Daniel came home for fall break. He walked through the front door with a duffel bag over his shoulder and a smile that reached his eyes. I'm back, he announced. Sarah looked up from the stove. You're back, she repeated, warmth flooding her voice. He dropped his bag and walked straight to the kitchen, peeking over her shoulder. Are those my favorite cookies? Maybe, she teased. If you're nice. He laughed that genuine, unguarded laugh she had fallen in love with years ago. Not romantically, but the way a mother falls in love with her child's happiness. That evening, they sat around the dinner table like no time had passed. Daniel told stories about college's roommate who played guitar too loudly, the professor who fell asleep during his own lecture, the late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about life. Sarah listened to every word, watching how his hands moved when he talked, how his voice had deepened even more, how he carried himself with a confidence that hadn't been there before. After dinner, Daniel helped her wash dishes. They stood side by side at the sink, the warm water running over their hands. Hey, Sarah, he said quietly. Yeah, I got your letter. She paused, her hands still in the soapy water. Oh. I wasn't sure if you'd like that. Letters are kind of old-fashioned. He shook his head. I loved it. I read it 3 times. I keep it in my desk now, by my bed. Her heart swelled. You do. He nodded, not looking at her, focusing on the plate in his hands. Sometimes I have hard days. Days when I feel like I don't belong or I'm not good enough. And I read what you wrote. About not having to be perfect to be loved. It helps. Sarah set down the sponge and turned to face him. Daniel, look at me. He did. You belong, she said firmly. Here? Anywhere. You belong because you're kind, and you're thoughtful, and you care about doing the right thing. That's not something everyone has. But you do. And I'm not just saying that because I'm your stepmother. I'm saying it because it's true. His eyes glistened. He swallowed hard. Thanks, he whispered, for everything. She pulled him into a hug, letting him hold on as long as he needed. Later that week, Daniel surprised her by waking up early on Saturday morning. He found her in the garden, pulling weeds from the flower beds. Need help? He asked, already kneeling down beside her. You don't have to, she said. I want to. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the sun rising slowly behind them. Then Daniel spoke. You know, I used to be embarrassed about that day. The day we played catch. Sarah kept her hands in the dirt, her voice calm. No? But I don't feel embarrassed anymore, he continued. I feel grateful. Because if that hadn't happened, I don't think we would have ever talked. Really talked. I would have kept my walls up forever. She sat back on her heels and looked at him. What changed? He thought for a moment. You did? You didn't shame me. You didn't make it weird. You just understood. And that made me realize that you were safe, that I could trust you with the messy parts of me. Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. The messy parts are the real parts. Daniel, anyone can love someone when everything is easy. Real love shows up when things are awkward and hard and uncomfortable. That's what family is. He nodded slowly. I think I finally understand that now. The day before Daniel returned to college, he asked Sarah to go for a walk with him. They strolled through the neighborhood, past the park where he used to play soccer, past the school where he'd spent 6 years, past the corner store where he bought his first slushie with his own money. "This place will always be home," he said quietly, "no matter where I go." Sarah looped her arm through his. "And you'll always have a place here. Always." They stopped at the old oak tree in their backyard, the same tree where he used to practice his throws. Daniel picked up a small stone and tossed it gently from hand to hand. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" he asked. "What?" "Mom. My birth mom." Sarah's breath caught, but she kept her voice steady. "What about her?" "I used to be afraid that loving you meant forgetting her, but I don't think that anymore. I think she'd be glad I have you. I think she'd want me to be happy." Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "I think she would too, Daniel. And I hope you know I never wanted to replace her. I just wanted to be here for you." He turned to her, his own eyes wet. You always have been." They stood there for a long moment, the afternoon light filtering through the leaves, casting soft shadows at their feet. That night, as Sarah tucked herself into bed, she heard a soft knock on her door. Daniel opened it, just a crack. "Hey," he whispered. "I just wanted to say good night." "Good night, Daniel." He hesitated. "Sarah. Yeah.
I love you."
She smiled into the darkness. "I love you too. More than you'll ever know." He closed the door quietly. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah fell asleep with a heart full of peace, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real.